On this business video tip, I want to talk about a useful analysis that I use in my remodeling business. It's called the 80-20 rule. And if you study business or economics, you're probably familiar with what's called a principle called the Pareto Principle. Pareto was born in 1848 and he became known as a very important philosopher and economist. Legend has it that Pareto noticed that 20% of his pea plants in his garden yielded 80% of the pea pods. This observation caused him to think about uneven distribution. So he started thinking about wealth, and he discovered that 80% of the land in Italy was owned by 20% of the population. He then investigated different industries, and he found that 80% of the production of products typically came from 20% of the companies. This generalization became known as what's called the Pareto Principle, or the 80-20 rule. The 80-20 rule means that in almost any situation, 80% of the results will come from just 20% of the action. This 80-20 rule observes that most things have an unequal distribution. And while it's not always an exact 80-20 ratio, this imbalance is often seen in many areas of business. For example, 80% of our revenue is typically generated by 20% of our customers. That's true for me. 80% of the complaints that we get typically comes from 20%, hopefully less, of our customers. 80% of the quality issues typically come from 20% of our products that we use. So how can you use 80-20? Well, as a business owner, I use 80-20 to truly understand which projects are most important and what are the most important goals to my organization, and what specific tasks do I need to focus and align to those goals. The 80-20 rule helps me identify my best and highest paying clients, which allows me to focus on the money makers, obviously, and strengthening those long-term relationships with them. It's important to remember that there are only so many minutes in an hour, hours in a day, and days in a week. And we can use the 80-20 rule to better manage our time and focus on the things that, like on task lists, that really make a difference. For example, 20% of our workers contribute to 80% of the results. So let's focus on rewarding those employees. 20% of the customers contribute to 80% of our revenue. So let's focus on satisfying those customers. Let's focus on the few goals and activities that are most critical to our success. I want to say though, if you misapply this tool, you can make critical mistakes. For example, if you focus on 20% of your top performers in your team at the expense of the rest of the 80%, you're not being a good boss. You're still accountable. You're still responsible for building up your employees, making people become top performers, or raising the bar, as well as assessing and potentially eliminating poor performers. That's our job as bosses. The bottom line, the 80-20 rule is a useful construct when analyzing our efforts and outcomes, and it's priceless when applied to tasks and goal lists. Use it liberally, but don't accept it as an absolute, or you'll likely misstep. Just use it as a tool. Look at your own productivity through an 80-20 lens. You can think about what you can cut. Cut 80% of your tasks or projects or unimportant things that don't contribute to your goals. So what 20% of your work creates 80% of your outcome or revenue? Think about that. I'll let you guys think about this one, and we'll see you at the next business tip.